Lauren, thank you so much for taking some time to connect today. I'm really excited to speak with you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Hey, we always like to begin by just hearing a little bit about your story of awakening. How did you awaken to these concepts of mindfulness and spirituality and personal growth? Tell us the story.
Beautiful. I feel like my journey is a little bit unique that I don't have like a singular like starting point. I was raised in a very spiritual family, in a very Eastern spiritual faith, and so I grew up vegetarian because of our spirituality. My parents didn't drink because of our spirituality. My dad meditated every day for 3 hours. So I was around it, and I always was a very inquisitive child, like, Dad, what about this part of the universe? And Dad, what about this part of the universe? And actually has a really unique connection to my origin story of my company. But really just like always having questions growing up and being in an environment where I could get those answered. My my awareness into more of the mindfulness that this was actually a thing that people taught and you could like do, that came more into like my early 20s when that started to develop, and becoming more aware of, yes, I had a unique upbringing, but also like there's a place for this in the world.
Okay, you skipped right over the fact that you said your dad meditated 3 hours a day.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 hours. Yeah.
Ongoing? That was an ongoing practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Every day. I remember being able to tell when he was meditating every day. Like I would be able to like feel something in the field, or I would be able, I think I told somebody else that I was speaking to about it. I could feel like a gold sparkle in the air and I couldn't see it, but it was like this inner knowing, like, oh, Dad must be meditating right now. And he did it consistently every single morning because that was part of the our spiritual practice, his. And I think it gave me a lot of um, influence in the fact that like he was such like a steady spiritual person. Like it wasn't like there's all different kinds of spirituality, and some of it's way out there and some of it's woo woo whatever, but this was a very grounded thing because it was just like something, a daily practice that he did every single day and he never missed, not that I could ever recall. And if he didn't do it, he was always making sure, well, not that I know that he didn't do it, but I don't think that he ever skipped a day. And I'm sure that if he did, he would like make up for it that night or something like that. But just every morning, that was just kind of our routine. Yeah.
And was there a sense when you were seeing that, and I don't know if he did it out in the open or behind closed doors or whatever, but like, okay, did you feel the pressure to do that as well? Or did you either feel it explicitly or implicitly? Like, what was that family environment like?
Yeah. Interesting question. The specific spiritual faith, I don't think taught or like, had you teach your kids how to do it. And I think that there's some value in that, kids may not know. I mean, mindfulness meditation is one thing, but like this specific type of meditation was more like there's a certain process to it about going inside. So it was never like talked about like that we had to do that, but I know that there was probably some expectation that as we grew older, we would make the same choices, adhere to the same spiritual faith. Because we were raised in it. Like I said, we were vegetarian. I've never veered from that, but there was never, it was more just the way it was, not ever like an expectation that we had to adopt that. I think my dad always expected that we all would. I have one of 6 kids. And I think that was just the way that we were all gonna, for the most part, continue forward with. Yeah. My
What?
mom didn't meditate quite as much. And she was part of the same spiritual faith as well. So that maybe was part of the balance that we were never told like, oh, you have to do this by a certain age. You're doing this, it was just kind of the way it was.
Dad was hardcore, mom was slacking off.
Mom was raising 6 kids. So that was her out, I think, on that part of it.
What is spiritual faith? Just so, if you don't mind sharing, I'm curious.
Yeah, it's out of India. It's called Radhaswami science. So it's the science of the soul. It's um, a a system of, essentially kind of at the most practical core of it. It's a system of meditation that teaches you how to like go inside, reconnect with God, source, everything on the inside versus a lot of spiritual faiths go into idolatry and guruism. There is a teacher involved, but it's more just going inside and teaching you the methods of going through the different dimensions in kind of like layman's. Yeah, there's a lot to it, but that's essentially just a meditation system.
Amazing. Now, you said that around in your 20s, you started to understand perhaps that there's I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that mindfulness was a thing, I guess is the way you said it. But at what point did you feel like, okay, I want to invest my life in this beyond just a personal practice to helping other people in this way? Where did that shift kind of take place?
Yeah, that actually was a little bit later. In my early 20s, I became aware of it and became aware that yes, I was different. Yes, I'd had this unique background that I would lend towards, having that as a purpose if I ever wanted to, but didn't really fully sink in until I was living in Sedona actually. And I think I had, no, what was I, 30, 31, when I'd been working in like chiropractic field for a while already, wellness centers, like I'd had that like, okay, there's a thing for this. So I guess that leads into like the early 20s. I started moving into the wellness businesses. But for me personally, knowing my part in it was when I was in Sedona. And I remember I was managing a vitamin store at the time. And, it was like this nutritionist and all this stuff. And I was talking to one of my really good friends in the store, Cynthia Richmond. I love her dearly. She's passed now, but she was one of my, really dear friends in Sedona. And she was so good at just helping people just like find their thing or find their, she was a little bit of a coach herself. But I remember telling her, I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. I can do this, I can do that. Like, I just feel called for something bigger. And she's like, what about a spiritual life coach? You would be really good at that. So like that was like a pivotal thing that I started to go down that path of learning and how can I personally support people? Like I grew up in such a universal like love and universal like spirituality that it was the way of life for me. But then it kind of came more, growing up, realizing that not everyone has that, not everyone, is that or has had that exposure to that. So bringing it into my purpose and my life was very pivotal because like, oh, maybe that's part of my purpose that I can help other people be exposed to these things that I take for granted or that I'm just used to having around me.
Hmm. So, how did that unfold? Did you go into like courses or start to study something, or how did that play out for you?
Yeah, I that was the first time I'd ever really considered life coaching in a really like a mentorship model. I had studied a lot of different healing art modalities by that point.
Okay.
So I did go to it was an online course at the World Coach Institute. I started their program there and I started seeing private clients kind of just getting some guinea pigs and kind of testing out my presence. And I remember towards the end of it, right before I certified, I will be fully transparent. I'm not certified in, a life coaching modality, but I got close because as I was again still searching for other healing arts modalities that I wanted to learn, I was introduced to a modality called alpha biotics, which was being taught in Dallas. So all of a sudden, like that was like my big like, oh, that's my one modality because I've always been searching for one, and now I know that there's many that can help. But I kind of dropped everything that I was doing in Sedona and moved out to Dallas. I dropped my coaching for a little while. It did come back when I moved out here to Mount Shasta. Um, but my kind of shtick and my like journey through life has always been trying to find the right modality to help other people. And then bringing in the life coaching was that added missing piece that I'm now starting to like really, not even starting, but like last few years, I've started to really implement and bring into my business and my own life purpose.
Mhm. I want to take a quick little detour because before we get into your retreat business and Orion Retreats, part of your life is fine art, visual arts. And I think, is this one of your paintings behind you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if you're not watching on YouTube, now you've got motivation to go check out the video here to see Lauren's work. Um, Talk to me about visual arts and how that has unfolded in your life as well. Whether were you super creative as a kid, or is that something newer as an adult?
Yeah, thank you. I love sharing this part of my journey because it's part of the healing aspect of everything too. I was creative as a child. I drew a lot, but I didn't. I think I imagined if a child like knew about their creativity, they'd be like sketching all the time and doing all this stuff and creating. I didn't quite have that. I was very much in the spiritual world and out in nature all the time, outside playing. And then when I early high school, I started taking a few drawing classes, and I was like, oh, and somebody else like recognized it first. Like I was just like sketching, it's like, oh, you're good at that. I'm like, oh, wow, thank you. Kind of like that little external validation bump that I got. And then by about junior year in high school, I was done with all my um requirements. I'd taken all the AP. I'd been challenging myself intellectually, academically, and I got bored and I didn't have anything else to do. And so like I had all these classes I still needed to take. So I got into photography, art, all the art classes I could do, pottery. And I really just like took to it. I looked forward to it every day. I was a little bit of that rebellious teenager in that, like, I just, I didn't, I don't know. I wasn't a cheerleader. I wasn't a sports person. I played basketball a little bit, but like it just became my thing. And I got like really just wrapped up in it. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was just creating all the time. And then somebody came to our school, a guidance counselor from a college, Northwest College of Art, and basically like, talked to us about having a career in art. I'm like, you can have a career in this? Like you can actually like do this and like have it a thing? Because I've always, even up until that point, I'd always been looking for my purpose. And so I did go to art school. In my early 20s, I had some family trauma. My father passed away, and that kind of like interrupted my creative process in general, just pure trauma, like on a physiological basis or principle. And so I moved away from creativity for a long time and got into the healing arts. And I talk about this a lot in some of the other podcasts that I've been on, and interviews, that the process of going through the healing arts and trying to find the one thing that's going to help everybody else ended up help me to balance my brain and heal on such like a nervous system level through, all kinds of, I was in a hiking accident, father passed away, my brother ended up passing away later in life. But it ended up healing so much of it that my creativity ended up coming back. And in school, they always taught a lot of form, and I got my creativity kind of squashed out that way. So then when I left school, it's like, well, I don't have nothing else to do because I'm not doing technical stuff. But when the healing came back, this whole world of abstract art just opened up. Like I had no idea even abstract was a thing up until that point. And I just started by putting down a bunch of color. I think I was trying to do an elephant once I picked up the palette knife again. And when I started, putting all these like palette strokes down, like all these textures started coming out. I'm like, well, let's just follow this for a little while. And then turned into an international art career. I've been represented by different shows, a gallery in Dallas for a little while. And it's really a testament to like how the human spirit, like we are created to create. We are co-creators of our own reality. And if you take charge of your life in a certain way that, like, even if you don't know the end goal or the end, destination, if you just trust the journey, it brings such like this beautiful, like full circle experience back to you. And that's how art kind of came back. And now I'm incorporating it into my business and into my offerings, and teach people to, even if it's not art, we are creators and we're meant to create. So whatever that means for you, I like to help people tap into that.
Amazing. And so I want to now kind of go back to the path that we were on, talking about the unfolding of Orion Retreats. You have this successful business where you're leading people on retreats and helping people curate retreats. Did you do a lot of travel as a kid or go on a retreat at some point that inspired you in this way? Like, what is it about travel or retreats that it's got to be impactful somehow to begin this?
Yeah, the travel aspect. I think I'm doing this halfway because I want to travel so much. I didn't have a chance to with such a big family. It would have been ungodly expensive, I'm sure. Yeah. But I've always wanted to, and I've always dreamt about all the places that I want to go to. In my personal life, I always like to do road trips. I always like to check things out. I did do, like, in my adult life, I did more than I did as a kid. But the real call to it was the retreat experience. In 2015, when I had moved to Dallas to learn this new modality that I was like totally into, once I graduated, I started having these ideas of creating containers where we could take practitioners of this modality, take guests or clients of this, and just kind of create these, like, I didn't know retreats was really a thing then. I think I was just in my own little world, so I don't know all these words that start to come up, like retreats. Okay. But create kind of these containers around the world where maybe I had visions of having like a training center in this one area, because I wanted to teach this, and then having like experiences where people just come and they get like a week's long worth of healing arts work, because then I had my other modalities too. And again, I didn't know the word retreat was a thing. But when I moved to Mount Shasta here in 2020, I started working for a retreat center that was here. Got to learn kind of the back end of some things. And then when we parted ways, I was like, I can do this. Wait a minute. I had an idea for this. What if we created containers where people come and then, yeah, you have wellness retreats, and it kind of blossomed from there. And now it's like much bigger than that first idea. But the main part of it was taking people out of their like regular patterns in their regular lives, unplug them, give them a healing experience, and then get them integration work where they can start to like really make transformational work. Again, the important part was like the repatterning, because you have to break certain patterns in order to replace them with something new. So I knew that travel was going to be a part of that. And of course, going to all the different sacred sites of the world. I'd already been to Australia and Uluru. I lived in Sedona and Mount Shasta, these more like vortex areas. So I knew that was an important aspect of it. So I bring all that into the travel piece as well.
Mm. So when you started planning your first retreat, the very first one you led, what was going through your mind? Was there excitement? Was there nervousness? Was there anxiety? Take us through that process, because I'm sure that there are people, retreats are a big deal now. People have visions of leading retreats around the globe. And take us through that process for somebody who maybe hasn't led one before. What did you experience your first go around of preparing and leading one?
So there's two parts to this. The very, very, very first retreat that I did, I was a planner for somebody else. And that came about very organically because I was starting my thing. I was going to bring people to Mount Shasta or go around and do this, but I didn't know what I didn't know yet. And I didn't have a lot of experience in that. And I remember reaching out to a friend of mine that teaches the Enneagram. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be like doing some advertising stuff for some retreats. Do you have any workshops or anything that you want to do? And he was like, yeah. So then it turned into like, we're going to run an Enneagrams retreats in Kansas City. And so our first one that we did, it was his, but I was there. I was, co-creating it with him and, was the coordinator for that. That gave me kind of like my first experience of like, oh, this is really valuable. This is really cool. Got really excited. Took me down the path, of course, of planning other people's retreats. But the first one that I did personally, like led, was here in Mount Shasta for the Ring of Fire eclipse last year. And I had experience planning it for other people, but when you do it for yourself, it's much different. And it was so impactful for me, like in a way that I wasn't expecting. We did an elemental retreat where we went to the different sacred sites around here in Mount Shasta, earth, water, air, and then on last day, of course, was fire for the Ring of Fire. We went up to Crater Lake, and it was just phenomenal. And I just really like sank into like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I have been like waiting for my entire life. And I had learned enough that I was able to support myself in creating it and doing all the logistics. But then it really also anchored in like, I was so not, I don't want to say stressed out because it was an exciting stress. Good stress can be good. But realizing like all the moving parts to put it in place. And then once you show up, you have to make sure that you detach from that planning part of it and show up as fully as a facilitator. So in that process too, I realized that there's a gap for a lot of retreat leaders where like they may not know how to do the logistics, how to do all the planning stuff, or they do and they push themselves through it. And by the time that they get to being a facilitator, they may not be able to disconnect, or they're still in that planning mode where like, oh, how's this and how's this? And I found myself doing that. I had to make sure that I pulled myself back from when I was doing that during my own retreat. And then that's when I really realized, okay, I want to have offer the support to other people that I didn't necessarily have, that I'd had to learn myself, so that it closes that learning gap for them and can really like catapult and launch other retreat leaders. So that's how it became like me leading retreats and also supporting other people in their, retreat leader journey.
That is such a good distinction of how do you remain like present spiritually, relationally, connecting to people, and yet freaking out about all the details and what's going right and not going right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that feeling all too well. What are the other surprises that came about over the last year as you've been leading retreats and connecting with people who are also leading theirs? What are some things that maybe people just wouldn't even realize, like, oh man, this is a big deal. You really need to be aware of this, or this is something I learned that was exciting or that I didn't realize. Like you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think this is a really good question. I think one of the main things is for one, everything that it does take to put on a retreat. Like people, I keep hearing in the industry is like, oh, I tried to do retreats once, I didn't make any money, or I had to spend money and I don't want to do it again. And it's like, oh, there's such a different world out there of like, you can be profitable doing retreats. You can like sustain yourself on a, with your own, sacred commerce, doing this work. And it's so needed in the world that there shouldn't be such like a separation between the finances and doing your life's purpose. I think a lot of people can speak to that. I think there needs to be, and through my own experiences, there needs to be, and where I'm trying to put myself is like kind of raising the bar a little bit on some of the professionalism in the retreat world. I've had a number of friends and colleagues who, like, for example, like, and I'm not trying to like put any other venue or anything else down, but they had a really negative experience with a venue that they misrepresented the venue with their pictures online. And my friend paid like close to, I think, like $10,000 for this retreat center. And it was in shambles when we got there. And I think that you have to be very discerning in the industry. And I think that it gave me even more impetus to kind of go out and vet these things. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's so much more than just picking a place, getting your people and going. Like you really have to be very, very intentional about where you go, who you choose to align with, because things like that can ruin it for all your guests. This friend in particular, her guests like love her and like they're her audience. So like there was no like nothing more that came from it from that. But I can imagine that, people have certain expectations of how we're marketing it as facilitators versus like how the actual experience is. And so, yeah, being very intentional about who you decide to partner with, make sure that all your things are vetted out. And one more thing I want to add to that too is like when you're doing this work too, and you have like say co-facilitators or co-hosts, or you're bringing on, guest facilitators, you usually have to be very intentional about that too, and make sure, for one, like you can meet somebody like, oh, you teach something wonderful, you would be of value to this, but you have to go deeper than that. And I've also learned this the hard way, because you learn really quickly about the type of people that you don't align with. They may be a great person, have wonderful teachings, but if there's something like, if there's a disconnect in your alignment, it makes all the difference. And it shows up on a micro level. And then if you continue forward with them, it shows up on a macro level. I've thankfully had a couple people that I didn't ultimately align with, and it took care of itself. It dissolved itself before we got to the retreat. So we didn't have to worry about it. But I can imagine like if that kind of discord was there at the retreat, that changes your guest experience. So just be very mindful about, who you're working with, and make sure that don't necessarily rely on other people to do this, or hide. I guess the point is like hide behind other things or other people. Like be confident in what you're here to teach, and the right people will come to you to fill your retreat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the dissonance that you're talking about with a potential partner, whether it's somebody who's a facilitator or whatever role they're playing, do you find that that's more like personality? Is it more values? Is it more respecting you as a leader, defining roles? Is it all of the above? Like, help us see that a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. It's a little bit all the above. I think that um, it's really easy to be very, very inclusive of differing values or differing perspectives. And I appreciate that in the industry and with the people that I work with. Um, the main thing, I mean, there were two different circumstances too, but the main thing for one of them was like almost like a power struggle. Like, and so you have to be very clear on, roles, like you said, like either like we're doing this, we're co-creating this together. So we have like mutual expectations of each other to put this on, or I'm putting this on and I'm hiring you and I'm kind of leading it. So you kind of have to kind of go with what we're doing a little bit versus it making it, your showcase type of thing. And so I learned real quickly, how to find that balance, because it is. And if you don't have those harder conversations up front, then it does lead to some dissonance. And then a little bit of just like, who's leading it? Like, who's the real leader? Because most people will rise up. But if you don't have the proper, like, I don't know, foundational expectation set or communication, it can lead to those just little things that later turn into bigger things. And
Unmet
it's
expectations.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you describe that. I can see that even just projects that I've done weren't necessarily retreats, but the language that it seems like you use early on sets the tone for that expectation. So oftentimes I think it's easy in the spiritual world, like you said, to be really inclusive, go, oh, let's partner together on this. Oh, partner, are we, so we're partners, right? Does that mean financial partners? Does that mean vision partners? Well, no, I just kind of meant like we're working together, right?
Yeah.
Or I define it, I kind of describe it as defining the playing field. Like,
Mm.
what playing field do you want to empower that person to? Is it the entire, what are the boundaries? Okay, well, these things are already set. These are the days, this is the location, this is the vision. Like you said, it could be, I'm hiring you. I'd like you to come in and do this one component. I'd like you to do these breathwork sessions, these meditations. I've got everything else, kind of dialed in. Those things, I think people have a difficult time saying those things and feeling like it's going to be confrontational when
Mhm.
really it can just be uh, casual, matter of fact, of like, oh yeah, we kind of got this handled. We're good here, but this is the part that I'd really love your help with. That kind
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
kind of helps people. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's super important. What are the things you've described professionalism as something that you're seeking to set apart in terms of Orion Retreats? Anything else that comes to mind where you go, okay, this is what makes Orion Retreats different, sets us apart from other retreats?
Yeah. That's good. Well, for one, the kind of the content of what we teach, I really like to focus on personal growth, professional growth, yeah, spirituality and wellness, absolutely. But really kind of focus on the transformational aspect. There are tons of transformational leaders, and I don't all of it's in the, like you said, in the playing field. But I really like I'm trying to really make a differentiation. Like, you're going to go through a process that's going to help you with this, this, and this. And there's a lot of retreats out there that can get into, oh, this is like a nice, pretty vacation somewhere nice. And that's wonderful. Like, that's needed for a lot of people. But what I really am trying to do is separate myself in the corner of, yeah, the personal growth and development, to really give people that space for creative consciousness. And again, tap into their own sense of, one of my taglines is awaken to your divinity, and whatever that can encompass, of a really going inside and going through a process, more so than doing yoga for 7 days. That is a process too, and you can go inside, but it's like it's encompassing the mind with the personal growth, the body, obviously, and doing go around sacred sites and hiking and the different adventure things that we do, and then your soul and what's going to nourish your soul. I'm working on some conscious leadership retreats that dive into, like, what is your soul here to express, and what is it here to do, and what's your soul purpose. So all of my retreats try to encompass all aspects of that. The professionalism part, I think, comes from, you hear horror stories about like rhythmia and other like places that there's not a lot of boundaries between the facilitators and the guests and that kind of stuff. And really wanting to make sure that the what people think of as retreats is not the horror stories that they hear, and it's not like the breeding ground for you hear a lot of sexual abuse, and like, yeah, facilitators taking advantage of their position of power. So like, I just, I want to, because I say this because, like, when I started saying, like, oh, I'm going to be doing retreats, a lot of people have that, oh, I heard this one thing about this one place or this one facilitator. And so I want to kind of like be a part of, like, a lot of people help to replace that stigma that it may have had at some point. I don't think it does anymore, but I really want to make sure that, yeah, we're providing a safe space for healing. And if you feel like there's um any space in there that you're not safe in that environment to really like open up, then let's address that. And I want to make sure to like stay on that side of it, because it is like you're showing up vulnerable. And if I have any inkling that any other guest doesn't hold that same sacred space, they're out of there, like, completely. And I will do that same with facilitators too. Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with a facilitator in that way, but other guests, you have to be very, very discerning with who you allow to bring in. Even if they're just paying guests, you have to be very discerning.
Mhm. How do you discern that when you're maybe having a conversation via Zoom or phone and you're thinking, okay, is this person a good fit? How do you personally kind of vet or include people in a retreat? How do you do that, like you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's very intuitive. I think it's like, your emotional intelligence has to be like very present in that conversation. I listen to what people say. I listen to their mannerisms. I don't want to say that I'm like completely like checking all the boxes or like really like scrutinizing them. But I listen to what they say. I have certain questions that I ask, based on the theme of the retreat and other guests who are already registered. I'm like, okay, is this going to be a thing? Making sure it's all compatible. And then just really like kind of like their overall attitude for life, you can see in how they speak. And if they're super negative, I think in a lot of retreats, they're not going to fit. It doesn't mean that they don't need the work too, but I might suggest a different tool or something else, or doing a different program or different work ahead of time
Yeah.
before they come to a retreat like this, or any retreat, that they're looking at. I guess the main part is like you kind of know. And for me, it's a very like resonance thing. Like I see energy and it's like I feel energy, and it's like also a generator in human design, so I get a very visceral yes or no
Yeah.
when I do my kinesiology tests and when I am like in the space with that. So I think you just have to kind of trust your own judgment.
Yeah. 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 So you have retreats that you are putting on throughout the year. So I kind of want to talk about like nuts and bolts about what you offer in terms of not necessarily the exact retreats on exact dates, because I really want this conversation to be evergreen so that somebody comes across it 2 years from now, they can, right? But I mean, you're welcome to share specific retreats. I'm not saying that. It's just more of, I want to hear, how are you creating retreats yourself, as well as what are the exact things that you're offering to other retreat leaders in terms of helping them plan? So walk us through what you offer.
Absolutely. Thank you. On my side of things, I have spiritual adventure retreats that, again, I go around sacred sites and we do spiritual work, energy work, um, really work. I hate to sound too woo woo, but we work with the land energy, the different vortex areas, and that is very activating for the energy body in and of itself. So that's kind of my thing that I do, and I have different tools. I use Enneagram. I'm just getting into human design, but astrology, numerology is my big thing. So I incorporate that into each person's experience and really make it custom to them, and then go around to these places. I am developing and have just launched some conscious leadership. Um, Retreats for next year, and that's going to involve, again, like as I spoke to earlier, like bringing in all these different tools to find out what is your soul here for, and how can this community support you as a conscious leader, a spiritual entrepreneur, and bring your message more into the world. So it'll be more mastermind level retreats. And then how I support other people, it's kind of twofold. On the one hand, I am a full service retreat planning boutique agency. It's very boutique because I'm very selective about who I bring on and making sure that I have enough attention span for multiple people. So I only take 10 on this level. That we just do full service. So we'll plan your logistics for you. We have venue partners already, but if there's some place that you want to go and we don't know anybody, we'll do the research to find the right venue, vet them out, like really go through that process, because I don't want to have anyone have like a bad experience with any place that we chose for them. Of course, they get to ultimately make that decision of who they go with. Find the right chef or cook, or either in that area, or we have some on hand that we recommend. And really just kind of do the full service, like customer communication, booking, registration, take care of all of that. And then depending on the different model that we use, we either like pay you out as a facilitator or it's a profit share. And then it's also can be very, very white label too, if you want that. The opposite side of that coin too is that we provide a platform for our leaders to elevate their message, elevate their brand, get their teachings, their programs, their one-on-one, offerings out into the world more. So on the inside of that level of our retreats is that kind of like an in-house PR agency, where for our highest, like the ones that go full service with us, there's a lower model, like lower tier that people can do more of like a do-it-yourself. So we'll provide the tools, we'll provide, insights, mentorship on how you do it, but that's really your thing. Again, the higher one then is like it's an Orion retreat. So then like you're getting the best of all of everything that we offer, marketing, all the things. And so then coming back to that, those are the ones that get that in-house PR agency that we will represent you in a sort of way that as we find other people in the network, like we connect you with other people that want you as a guest facilitator. Like let's say we have breathwork people, as facilitators. If somebody comes to me as a retreat planning client or just in the network, hey, who do you know for this and this? It becomes like a referral network. But then also like we're going out and we are engaging in creating like a facilitator pitch deck and a facilitator, like so to speak, resume or a speaker's resume, where we're actively going out through all of our networks, all of our media networks, and representing you, but like, hey, I recommend this person for this, and really kind of like, yeah, almost like an art gallery. Like we're representing you and we're putting you out there and we're going to connect you with a greater audience and connect you with our podcasts and be on our podcast and really just like help you to elevate your thing. Some of it can include developing your content, developing your programs. Just we do a lot. And I feel like we're more than just a retreat company in that way, but I like it. It's really fulfilling a lot of purpose things for me.
I love it. And then on your website, you have a whole section on membership.
Mm.
Can you talk to us about how does that work?
Yeah, the that's relatively new. We were just starting to launch it. My vision for it is that it again goes back to the power of retreats and how much I believe in the retreat process. So it allows you to pre-book a retreat or pay for a retreat over the course of a year. But then also on the back end, you get access to all these coaches. You get access to all these programs and evergreen or one-on-one, like each different tier of the membership includes different things. And I think that's such a nice model because then you're not just, I mean, I do offer financing for retreats, but then it's not just like, oh, I'm paying off a retreat. It's like, oh, I get to be a member of this wonderful community where I can learn stuff, have resources and tools to dive into before my retreat, after my retreat, year round. And then, of course, the main basic tier one is that one retreat that you come and you can like get excited. Like I've got my thing planned for this year. I've got my self-care planned for this year. And every year you have the opportunity to do one. And then the tiers up from there is like maybe you want to do two, and then maybe you want to go on a luxury retreat. But it allows people to have access again to this back end community and then plan out their self-care. And their adventures for the year in a really like conscious travel model, not just like vacations anymore. Like if you're really ready to step into like what your life is and what you're here for, then these are the retreats for you to really like get access to that and come and, there's different tiers. But again, like the top tier one is going to be a luxury if that's important to you. Luxury, like, and I do the eco luxury bioarchitecture, choose venues that are very like in tune with nature, and then offer that so that they can have the highest level of support. And that includes like a whole new tier of things. But I'm excited for it. I've gotten a lot of really good response from the community. And I think that it's a really nice model to, again, offer people something on a consistent basis so that they know that they have that, set for the year and they can make a commitment to themselves. Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. All right. So if people want to check out the retreats that you're offering currently, where do they go? How do they connect with you on social media?
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, my website is orionretreats.com. So Orion, like the constellation, retreats, plural.com. You'll see, the membership, you'll see current offerings. We are always adding new retreats. So I encourage you to kind of come back often or subscribe to our email list so that you can have first access to those new retreats. My Instagram handle is at Orion Retreats. And we showcase a lot of our facilitators there, our new offerings of retreats, and then kind of some content around like conscious travel and conscious leadership, which is our main messaging. And then my, email me at info@orionretreats.com. My other Instagram handle for my personal stuff is Shine Your Divine. So you can DM me there as well. And I look forward to like starting the conversation. And if this feels like a good fit, let's just start talking. Yeah. And as a facilitator too, we're always looking for new people too. So whether it's retreat planning or you want to be part of kind of like our inner core team, I'm open to meeting and talking to new people.
Okay. So Lauren, someone is listening and they're thinking about, oh man, I have kind of been feeling called to do a retreat. Like I've got this community of people that I'm kind of rallying. I've been feeling called to do a retreat. I'm overwhelmed. I'm nervous. I don't know like the first next step to take. I have heard some tough stories about not being profitable. Like what would you say to that person? How would you encourage them?
Absolutely. I would say don't give up. Keep going. You'll learn as you go. I'm here to support you if you need that support. My team is here to support you, but like really like you'll learn by doing it. I think don't let it stop you. I think a lot of retreat leaders like, oh, I started planning one for a while, then it didn't work out. And so they even just stopped altogether. It's like you learn by doing it. And even if your first one goes off and you don't have profit, like know that there's other models for that, but then also like give yourself the tools to make it more profitable the next time or, sell it out next time. And yeah. And if I can support in that, I would be more than happy to, because my purpose is really intertwined with helping people find their purpose. And this is very sacred work. And I think facilitators need all the support that they can get to continue to show up in this way and not get burnt out from the details that I'm willing to handle for you. And my team is. So
Thank you so much, Lauren. All right, you guys, Orion Retreats, Lauren Dickinson. You've got to check out our website, orionretreats.com, and of course on Instagram. Be sure to swipe up on your phone if you're listening now, and then you can just click on those links. Those will be available, or you can go to our website, search her name, and get all the links to all the things. So, Lauren, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your work, kind of some of the behind the scenes. I love that you're offering, it's not easy. Like all the details, all the logistics that you say, it is not easy.
yeah.
And it's so great to be able to trust someone to just kind of handle that and then focus on whatever, the facilitator feels called to focus on. So it's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time.